So this is workshop number 1. This will be an overview. Presentation will be done by Mr. Napoli, with also our building and grounds superintendent here. Go ahead, Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. Let me start off with a quick agenda. Thank you.
Siri agrees.
And then I'll turn it over for a couple minutes to the superintendent that will really kick us off, and then I'll go into a presentation that I've presented, which many of you have seen before, and then we'll dive into the details of the capital budget with Mr. Caratini, transportation, as well as the administrative budget. Okay? So tonight's agenda, I quickly went over it, but just to go over, we're going to compare last year to this year, or this year to next year, sorry. We'll talk about state aid projections. We're going to talk about some of our revenue expectations, what our expenses are going to be, what our fund balance looks like. That's how much money we have. The first draft of the tax cap, and then, like I said, we're going to go dive into some department budgets. So as you know, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just have 3 points quickly to make tonight. I wanted to give a little overview on the state aid proposal. The governor's proposal was rolled out. New York State has a budget shortfall due to some Medicaid reimbursements from the federal government. His budget does not address the shortfall in the foundation aid formula and the amounts owed to the school districts that are high needs district like ours, which is owed about $4 million. That's had a big impact on our budgeting and programs, along with our ability to, have an impact on the tax levy. As a matter of fact, the governor's proposal is counterintuitive to any modification in the fund balance, in that he's consolidated the existing foundation aid with categorical aids, textbook aid, software aid, and other aid. So it looks like there's an increase in the foundation aid, but it's just a rollover, or he's rolling into the foundation aid all expense-driven aid. So we have to be very careful when we're looking at those numbers. It's not really an increase to foundation aid. Second thing I wanted to point out to your attention has to do with personnel and things that have been included in the budget. So the budget's tight with the proposed increase of $600,000 from the governor's state run, the initial proposed increase. Tax levy is at the cap, but I do want to point out, and the cap for us is 3.29%.
It should be 2.34.
2.3, oh yeah, right up here, 2.34%. But I'd like to just bring your attention, if you could look at, the administrator spent a lot of time to point 3.2. There's an attachment in 3.3.
So if you have your laptop, you can look at board docs. We're trying to reference board docs as well as the presentations as we go through. If you don't have your laptop, what the superintendent is talking about are there are in the back of the handout that you might have there are the projected class sizes as well as some proposed personnel changes. And if you don't have a handout, I've got a couple on the table over here that I'd be happy to grab for you while you flip.
So the proposed personnel changes are kind of impacted by the elementary class size. So if you look at 3.2 and you look at the spreadsheet, you can see where we were as of January 2020. You can see kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade numbers, and the number of sections that we have for each one of those grade levels. Then what we do is we project forward, and the 104 in kindergarten goes down to a first grade, the 81 goes down to second grade, and so forth. And we move all of those numbers up, and you can see that this year we have we have a lot of low class grade level sizes. So in kindergarten we have 17, first grade the average is 13 and a half, Second grade is 17. So moving the class sizes up and eliminating 2 positions through retirement and attrition, actually 2 retirements, we maintain our class sizes, and they're balanced out, where the kindergarten class size will be 16.67, first grade 17.33. Those are considerably low, which is good. We always want our kindergarten and first grade to be low. And then we're at the highest of 21, and this is, our enrollment is dipping. You can look at it and see, when I first started working here, these classes were anywhere from 130 to 140. They've slipped down to 120, 115, and now we're really looking at classes coming in at about 100. So while we can save 2 elementary positions, if you can open up, to 3.3 now. We put a priority spreadsheet together. We knew that we couldn't add everything we wanted to add, but with regard to personnel, elementary is in need of more mental health support and attendance support, so we added a guidance counselor into the budget. In the middle school, we are adding, we'd like to add a foreign language position back so that the students have an opportunity to get the foreign language credit at the middle school level prior to them entering middle school, and adding another guidance counselor in the middle school. That'll meet the needs of the regulations with regard to the new guidance standards, where each students have to have career plans put in place. And then Mr. Napoli can talk a little bit more about cybersecurity budget codes. So the total of that with the benefits is $347,800. You can see in the columns over to the right, where we have 2021 and to 2022, there are other things that we'd like to add back. So an Astor, we know we couldn't go above 350,000, so these are still the priorities that everyone would like to see. An Astor School Clinic, a pre-K midday bus run, social studies and science materials for the elementary school, middle school, a family consumer science teacher, and a transition counselor for the high school, which is about another $800,000. So you could see if the state gave us just 25% of the amount that they owed us, we'd be able to add all of these things back. I also listed all the retirees we have, which ones we're replacing, which ones we're not. There's question marks on 2. It's been rumored that they might or might not go, so we listed that there for you. And that's what I have with regard to personnel, which we can continue to talk about, but that's how the initial increase was put together. The last point I want to make with regard to the state of the budget is we'll have another document for you at the next workshop that'll analyze our operating deficits for the last few years. So a deficit is when your operating expenses exceed your operating revenues, which we've had. And how do we balance that? We balance that with the use of fund balance and funds in our reserves. So we have been doing that. And the problem with that, it's like taking money out of your savings account, and eventually your fund balance depletes, and you have a hole to make up for that, and either you get more revenue or you have to cut your expenditures down. So Vince Napoli's been working with Dr. Timms on another 5-year projection to share with the board about what that looks like with some parameters there. We are using the fund balance. We have been advised to use the fund balance by the comptroller, but there'll come a time where we're going to use all of our fund balance based on the trajectory we're on right now. And there are documents that Mr. Napoli will go through. So just wanted to share that with you. We don't have a lot of room. Of course, the governor's budget is preliminary. Hopefully they'll put some more money in the budget and we can, decide if we want to change priorities, add priorities, or so forth. But, that's where we are.
Wayne?
Do we happen to know the numbers for the pre-K enrollment for this year versus our projections for next year?
I can get that. I think they're pretty close to 60 from what I think they're in the low 50s. So I will get that. And we can only hold 60 students. So I will get the pre-K enrollment.
Thank you.
John?
Mrs. Wiles, so we're have 7 definite retirees this year
We have.
and 2 possible? Well, 6.8, I guess, if that's a .8 there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.8, right?
Okay, and even if we're not replacing 3 of the ones that are going, we're not making any cuts except for through attrition?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We're not making any cuts. As a matter of fact, even though the 2 elementary positions are not filled, we're hiring 2 guidance counselors and then adding a foreign language. So what we did we're realigning the resources we have. Instead of hiring 2 elementary teachers, we're reallocating those funds to other positions that have been identified as desperately needed.
Thank you.
So when we're done, if you want to go back and kind of recap what we talked about on board docs, as well as if you have the handout, after the presentation that I'm going through tonight, there's a summary page that kind of highlights, it's like the Cliff Notes version of tonight's. And then immediately following that, if you have the handout, if you can't see it up on the screen, there is a page that's called Budget Overview, and that actually reads along very nicely with that summary, which is on the page before. So what I have up on the screen up here, which is what our expenses look like right now for the upcoming school year, and you can see there's a couple line items that you kind of expect to go up. You have benefits, you have some salaries in there as well. There are a couple of lines in there, though, that we didn't anticipate this year, and we've seen substantial increases in the cost of special education, which drives some of our a big chunk of our transportation increases for next year. So we have students that have moved in during the school year that are placed outside the district, and a big chunk of them are at new locations. So we don't have an existing bus that goes there. So I'll give you an example. On the budget overview page that I'm talking about, on line 18, transportation is projected to go up with no new students or no one leaving, $659,000. So if you're looking up on the screen, if you can find line 18, you'll see transportation is at $659. It's almost an 18% increase.
And that's not an increase of CPI. We're locked into CPI for the actual contract. These are additional runs.
That's correct. So the next slide that's up on the screen just kind of gives us an
I just had a
overview.
question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Is the increase in transportation due to outside placements and special education?
That's correct. All of our home-to-school runs, we have 19 of them, stay static throughout the school year. Anything additional, it could be, most of the time, it's a special education placement outside of the district, right? Some of them could be due to students that are displaced. The federal law requires us to transport a student up to 50 miles to come to school. And believe it or not, this is the story I share, is that we had a student many years ago that was living in Pine Hill. They were at 49.7 miles, and mom wanted the child to ride to school every day 90 minutes. That's an expensive bus. Now, of course, we didn't send a big school bus. We sent a caravan, but that adds to the expenses. And while I do budget for some years we've had multiple students at different ends of the county, in different counties far away. So that can add an unexpected expense to the school year that you're in.
One more question. Last year, we talked about possibly condensing programs and possibly keeping some students here if we had programs for them. Will we still explore that?
Dr. Fogarty's working on that now to see if there are any students that are placed out of the district that could stay in the district.
Thank you.
Wayne?
Quick question. For athletic buses, are they in this transportation or in the athletic budget?
They are in this.
So I have a
I don't think so, Vince. Double check it, because I think on the athletic budget, I think there's a place for transportation there, and it's not, but.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I'll double check, and when Mr. Moyer presents his athletic budget, if it's in there and I'm remembering it correctly, I'll make sure that he points out what the cost of transportation is for athletics.
That's fine. I just want to, as we're looking through all these numbers, so just an example, the indoor track team, since I happen to go to a lot of meets, they take 2 buses to West Point. It's only 40 students. There's really not a need for 2 buses to go to West Point, especially when half of those students go home with their parents after their events are finished. So I think we need to look at those numbers as well. How many people are on the buses for those athletic events? Maybe we can chisel that down a little.
It's not in this run, Vince. The athletics, I think, are in the athletics run.
Okay.
You have, here is our late runs are on here. I don't see the athletic runs. I think
So
that's
that would be,
presented in the
that would be
athletic
part of
budget.
athletics. And I will tell you that as we dig into some of these budgets, over the last couple of years, at the recommendation of the comptroller, we've been right-sizing our budget. And you'll see when Mr. Caratini presents the capital, a lot of the line items have gone down due to the fact that we historically haven't spent all those funds, so we feel comfortable cutting them down, whatever that number is. So when Mr. Moyer and I take a look at athletics, we look at, okay, how many postseason events do you think you're going to have, or how many have you had? Are we going to have to send a bus? And we've over budgeted that, let's say fall trips, transportation by $5,000. And we've done that for the last couple of years, and we've gone to just about everything. So we feel comfortable taking that out, say 4,000 of that 5,000, and reducing that. So when you see the athletics budget, you might see some of those number changes in his budget. But I made a note, and we'll certainly take a look at that when he presents, and I'll talk to him before he comes up. I forget, you do have an updated calendar. We have moved some dates around. So just make sure that you know when the budget workshops are going to be. All the dates are pretty much the same. It's just when we're actually going to be presenting what topics. So I just want to spend a minute going over what our revenues look like.
Sure.
So I've added $100,000. We've had a BOCES refund the last couple of years. So I've added $100,000 there. Some of our other tax items, they go down. That would be our pilots. I'm still waiting on the Coles pilot to come in. That's based on the tax rate, so the tax cap formula might change a little bit. I did hopefully a pretty good estimate on what our pilot's going to be from Coles, but that number will change. And you'll also see, if you wanted to dive into the weeds for the tax levy limit, there's some things in there now with a new law that we can include BOCES capital items, so anything that anything that we pay for BOCES buildings, we can actually include that in our tax cap formula. For us, for this year, we're seeing about, and it's not updated there, we just got some final guidance today, the tax levy will remain around 2.34% if Coles changes a little bit, but that's about a $4,000 additional for BOCES capital. Our levy, like I said, is up 2.34%. Right now, as the superintendent indicated before, we're anticipating a 2.96 increase in state aid. Historically, the legislative runs have been more than the governor's executive proposal. He's holding back $200 million, so we hope to see some of that. We don't know how much. And then right now, I'm anticipating federal income, that those are our grants, to remain the same. If that changes, if I get that data, I will update that. And then, of course, there's the use of our reserves and anything that we might have sitting in our side coffers that the superintendent talked about, that once we spend it, it's gone, there's no getting that back. The next slide, and you have some details there, is what our state aid looks like, and I've taken the time to break out what the governor rolled up into the foundation aid. I've broken it out by the individual lines. I don't need to go through these one by one. If you want to make an appointment with me, I'd be happy to go through each one and explain it to you. But this ties back to the increase that we talked about earlier in revenues for state aid, and we hope and expect it to be increased as well. So 35,000 foot view, this is what the budget looks like. The total budget, we've got some federal funds in there. Federal funds offset some of our expenditures. Most of that are salaries. And then what our general fund budget looks like is around $49.9 million, with the use of our reserves at around $3.4 million. Just a recap of, and if you want to go back and look at the presentation, this is just another reinforcement of what we've been talking about all along. The tax levy increase, what the budget looks like, what its increase is, and some of the line items that are driving our budget up. So there's health care, there's some salaries, pension costs, special education costs, unfunded mandates, and then transportation, which we talked about briefly before, and I'll get into that a little bit more detail in a minute. We have a workshop today. I don't think I updated this slide based on the calendar. I apologize for that. Let me just take a look. All right. I will fix this and update the PowerPoint up on the website, but our next workshop, workshop number 2, is on March 3rd.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On the budget overview, you have administrative salaries, program salaries, and capital salaries. What are capital salaries?
The capital salaries may include our buildings and grounds department, our cafeteria monitors, things that don't directly support the programs, but that are involved with the maintenance of our facilities.
I think cafeteria monitors might be an admin, definitely all facilities.
Is it also fair to say that the increase is, while there is increase in salary, it appears to me that the benefits increases far outpace the salary increases?
Correct. And right now, I'm using a 5% increase in our health care. We do have projections on people, as people retire and they reach 65, their health insurance changes to a different rate. Christy in my office, what she does is she goes through based on their date of birth, and if they're going to retire, we kind of predict who is going to have the different rates. And we're using 5% for the increase for our Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's DHIC. That's the number we're using right now. Once we get final guidance from DHIC, most likely that will change. Hopefully it will go down. We don't know what that's going to be, but right now we've been told to budget for 5%. And if it goes down, then we'll adjust that number accordingly. So then that number would go down as well.
Also, if I could ask, BOCES special ed costs is pretty self-evident to those of us who sit here, but other BOCES costs, what would that entail?
So I will dive into that when we go through that, but,
Okay.
yep,
All right.
yep, but that's not tonight. That's the night that Dr. Corey will be here.
Very good.
We'll go through those line items.
But in general, they're programs that we purchase, you know,
Oh,
from.
okay.
So like we've been doing over the last couple of years, I'm going to skip over any of lines that have a 0% change or have a really small change. I'll hit the ones that have a big number change. It might not, the percentage change might be big. Just for example, if you look at the administrative budget, if you look at line 8, we took it from $1,680 to $900. That's a small increase of $780, but it's a 46% decrease, and that would be one of those lines that we historically haven't spent before.
Where are you?
So we have been seeing a decline in the usage of our paper and the things that we've been mailing. So if you look at lines 57 and 58 of the administrative budget, we've reduced them. We are hiring more substitutes, so if you look at line 76, we've actually had to almost double the budget from this year, transfer funds in. It's around $100 per employee to have them fingerprinted. Anyone who earns less than a certain amount of money, we reimburse them for fingerprinting, and that's usually what a substitute falls under that category. So as we hire more people, the cost for fingerprinting reimbursement goes up, so that's why you see that sizable increase there. So if you look at line 85, we talked about cybersecurity. Right now I have that in cybersecurity and insurance, just having some premiums that will cover the cost if anything does happen to happen regarding a cyber attack. So I've reached out to our insurance agent to shop for an umbrella policy that will raise our premium from what we currently have. Not our premium, well, the premium would go up, but what our coverage would be under our current insurance provider, nicer. So I've kind of put that in there as well, and that's cybersecurity insurance is not cheap.
So what is cybersecurity insurance? What will it do for us?
They will help scrub our data, reach out to people, do some research to find out how it happened, try to reclaim some of the funds. So a lot of what happens is they hack your data, and then they want you to pay to get your data back,
Right.
right? So they encrypt your files, and sometimes there are companies that can figure that out, determine the encryption key, or at least take legal actions and try to track them down. But there's a cost to doing all of that.
Sure.
And then sometimes if a school district is compromised, the Mid-Hudson Regional Information Center has to cut us off. That's their rule. And state ed requires that too. So they cut us off for 10 days until we're clean. I'm sorry, I think it's 30 days until we're clean. So then we have to move essential operations, because we can't connect to the internet or can't connect to BOCES anymore, somewhere else. So there might be a cost in moving the business office to another district and moving the computers over and all that. So I kind of lump that under insurance for the better, just for a better understanding of where it might come out of.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, in a nutshell, that's our administrative budget. I am going to bring up the capital budget, which is buildings and grounds.
Let me ask the board if they have any questions on the administrative budget. John?
Vince, I missed it. Did you say you were going to cover unfunded mandates tonight or no? Because we know that the governor put the tax cap on us, and then he continues to send us unfunded mandates. So I just wanted to know what that was, maybe last year as opposed to this year.
Yeah, I don't have a list of those off the top of my head. We can certainly, and I know we've done it in the past. I can certainly compile a list that we've gotten in the past. So for example, last year, but not this year, and you'll see in the capital budget, one of the unfunded mandates was, I really can't go hard and heavy to try to collect an unpaid school lunch balance. I can just continue to send letters.
Right.
So we had to cover those out of the general fund. Fortunately for us this year, we're CEP, so every child eats for free. So I just have to, I'm sending letters to try to collect the owed lunch balances from in the past. So you'll see that was actually moved completely out of the budget. That would be an example of an unfunded mandate.
I just was wondering, for people to know what the amount of that is, because we get the 2% cap and then the unfunded mandates come, and it has to come out of our own budget. And, not to suggest the governor's not fair, but the governor's not fair.
So I'll give you a great example of what we're budgeting this year for that. So if you look at the middle school guidance counselor, right? So we need some more crisis support, but what we really need is a guidance counselor down there that will do some of the crisis support, but really is going to provide those plans, those individual career plans that are now mandated. No additional monies come forward with that. So the increase and the uptick of support, along with all the, mental health needs in the district, really has taken a life of its own. But that one guidance position, $102,000 we're budgeting, is definitely a implication of but we'll see if we can quantify those, some of the unfunded mandates can be quantified. We'll see if we can I think we have done it.
Yeah,
we should pull it out.
We have done it before. Internal audits for districts, that's an unfunded mandate. That costs us money. While it's warranted, we've gone through many of them, but we're still required to do some. So, I made a note, certainly make you a list of those, and those that we can put an expense to it, we will be happy to do that.
And I'd like to suggest, I know I've done this in the past, that it's spitting into the wind, but I think that we, as a board and administration, should draft a letter to the governor's office and the state ed talking about this issue and how that number keeps growing, but the tax cap stays the same.
I think we did that last year. We can do it again this year. The other thing you should know that we're doing is, if you remember last year, we had a group from the Alliance for Quality Education that came down with some regents, and we toured the building. This year, NYSET, the New York State Teachers Association group, they are coming down, I think, on February, I think it's either the 28th, and we'll be touring our buildings, and I'll be sharing excerpts of that report. And we're inviting the press to come to that, too, to really allocated. It's kind of a collaboration for the school, and I think it's important, the more voices that are out there and whatever means we can get the information out is really important. So that is coming up.
Any other board members on the administrative budget?
Okay, so
Okay.
as we jump into the capital component, Mr. Caratini will come up. I'll stand by his side, just because there are some things listed there that he's not responsible for. There is a list on board docs, item number 3.7, that are frequently asked questions that we've been asked in the past of what does this line item cover? So you're welcome to take a look at that. Also up on board docs and on our website is a public input form. So if someone who's watching from home and if they want to fill it out and mail it in, they're welcome to do that, because you can't phone in here and no one's here right now to ask a question, but I will be happy to answer any questions that either a board member might have or a member of the public might have about any of the items that we're talking about tonight or any of the workshops going forward.
Thank you, Superintendent, board members. Excuse me if I'm a little bit hoarse, I'm getting over a head cold, but I'm here to present the capital budget. Starting with row 3, operation of plant. So under the operation of plant, we have utilities. Most of the utilities are being reduced. That is due to, we are looking at actual costs that we are spending now. Historically, we've over budgeted in utilities, so we're reducing all of them except for Church Street to reflect more of an accurate, this is what we're actually spending. On contractual services, most of them are staying the same, not changing. There are a few that are going down, and there's only one that is going up, and that is the garbage removal. That's, again, representative of an actual cost, and the garbage costs have been going up. So the total operation of plant, we're actually reducing the budget by $80,000, $80,300. Going down to the maintenance of plant, boilers have been fairly new. They're old, but they've been reconditioned, so basically no change in that. There is an increase in the water treatment for the boilers, and that is reflective of our new water treatment contract. The last contractor was basically under the capital project to repair actually change the boilers over and steam the water. They refused to give me a quote this year because it's too far for them to drive. So the vendor that did give me a quote, his price was $350 more a year. Going down the lines there, as you can see, basically HVAC is pretty much $0. Plumbing is being reduced. We are not really spending that much in plumbing supplies. The budget is adequate, and I'm really happy with it. Electrical, again, the electrical supply materials budget is more than adequate and more reflects what our actual costs are. Jumping down to line number 64, there is a $500 increase in materials and supplies for security. That is reflective of the new stickers that has the pictures of the person on it when they're visiting, getting those, that equipment, and the supplies to actually make those badges for them. Going down through general building maintenance, again, a line there that's being reduced is the maintenance of building. Quite an adequate budget there, again, reflecting more actual cost than what is actually being spent. Water testing and remediation on line number 76. Every 5 years, correct me if I'm wrong, every 5 years we are required by BOCES and the state to do lead testing of the water. This coming next budget year, we're up. We're on the rotation list. So BOCES basically comes down and does the testing, but we have to pay for the lab fees. And that's basically every faucet, anything that produces water, even in the lab spigots, has to be tested and sampled. Classroom furniture, we're reducing those. We really replaced most everything is brand new. Dropping down to, so there's actually a total reduction on maintenance of $47,600. Dropping down to debt services, looks like my mortgage. As I pay my interest off, my principal gets paid more, but actually it's going to drop, the total debt service will drop by $8,550 next year. For the next item on food services, Vince did mention this about the negative balances. If you need to elaborate more on that, okay. And then we got the capital outlay for the baseball fields. That was money that was carried over from.
Well, we put that into the capital.
Right, and we moved that into the capital project. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Wayne?
Yes.
Just quickly on line 7 for fuel oil.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea what we spent last year on fuel oil compared to this year? This year has been kind of a crazy winter with not a lot of tremendously cold days and snow and whatnot. So I'm just wondering if that's actually enough money compared to the year before, which was a normal winter.
It is a solid number. I will tell you that I left a little cushion in there just in case we had a year that exceeded our highest year that we've had for a long time. I can have Denise at the next board meeting actually do her utilities report where she has a lot of that. But that number is higher than any year that we've had in over a decade. So
Thank
I'm
you.
comfortable, and I think it's like maybe 187, 190, but I'm not sure. But if you want the exact number, I can get it. But that number gives us enough room, even if we have a really cold year. And plus, we have a new heating system here. We convert the steam to hot water, so we have been seeing some savings there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John?
Vince, is the reconditioning of the softball and baseball fields going to be done this year?
No.
Next?
That is part of the capital project, and that won't be done until the end of the project. And the reason why it gets done later in the project than earlier in the project, you're going to have a lot of equipment here, and you don't want equipment rolling over the work that we had done. And you also have to remember, Mr. Burns, you probably know this, but once the work gets done, we need 2 growing seasons on the grass before we can play on the fields. Otherwise, the grass and everything that we put down won't take, and then we'll have a maintenance issue with keeping the grass growing. So we're looking a couple years away before we do the fields, get the fields ready, and we can use them. So Mr. Moyer is well aware of this, and he's looking into options so that we can actually field our teams that use those fields that are going to be impacted.
We reverted to a 3-field system like in the medieval days,
What do you mean, John?
where you would rotate the crops a third
Oh.
of the way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Glad to see that the budget went down significantly, over 9%. Thank you.
So transportation is almost impossible to see on the screen as well as on paper. If you get it on board docs, you can zoom a little bit. But I've broken it out like we've had in the past in a couple different categories. Lines 1 through 25 are our home to school. And you'll see that on any of the bus runs, we move aides around as needed. Some buses, when they go to remote locations, you'll see there's a layover. So, for example, if we go out to eastern Westchester County, there's no point in having a bus drive 90 minutes there, drive 90 minutes back to turn around an hour later to drive back, because that costs fuel, that's driver time. So our transportation advisory services, they do a pretty good job negotiating with their transportation contractor, and they say, look, we're going to leave the bus to driver and the bus monitor, the bus aide there for a reduced expense. So whatever he can negotiate with them, and that keeps our costs down. So they drive to the remote school, they wait, they get the kids, and then they drive home. So you might see layovers in there, and there are a bunch of them in there that are layovers, and that's what that means when you see that. So really, the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2, you'll see all those special education runs. And you might see some, for example, if you look at line 47, we didn't have a student going there last year, so I didn't know that I couldn't budget for it, but we have a student going there this year, so that's part of our increase this year, and I've budgeted for that next year. Now, if that student leaves that school, that would be money that would be moved into maybe a new run or some other line in the transportation budget. And then down at the bottom on page 2 are some of our other costs. We have been, gasoline has been going up, so, and line number 66, that reflects a true representation of what our gas and diesel expenses are for the school year.
Jody?
Why is there a layover on our boat bus?
On which one?
On which bus?
Line number 6 proposed for 2021. Am I reading this correct?
You are.
You are, offhand, I don't know where the boat bus goes. It might go to Port Ewan, it might go somewhere, and then come back for a midday run for career and tech at BOCES. So rather than have it come back here and go back, I can certainly check tomorrow. I just don't have these runs memorized, but I will get that for you.
No. Yep. Yep.
So, Vince, I was just asking the superintendent, we established the P-TECH program. It's my understanding that we're going to be responsible for the transportation costs. That's going to be additional, correct?
For the
Is that
first-
figured in there?
Not
one.
sure yet.
For the, for year one?
For year one, I have to sit down with Lou Buffardi from TAS to see if we can use that run that goes to BOCES, Port Ewan, to get our kids there, because we're going that way anyway. We can run up 209 to SUNY Ulster, make a right on 213, go over, and then get to Port Ewan and
That would be
Kingston
the
that
way to
way.
do it.
So that's the type of thing that, I'm not a transportation expert, but the guy that we use, Lou, he is excellent. He'll look at the runs and see if we can double up on some of the runs and get our students where they need to go. And one of the things that the board approved at the last board meeting, but we try really hard, all the business officials in Sullivan and Orange County and Ulster County, we try to share runs the best we can. So we just started piggybacking, well, Tri-Valley's piggybacking with us, but they have a student that goes to the Kaplan School, so they bring their student to us, gets on the bus, and then we bring Ellenville students and the Tri-Valley students to New Windsor to the Kaplan School. Some people might know it as the McQuaid Foundation. So they share in 25% of the cost of the run, and then they pay for their own monitor on the bus to supervise their students. So that's something that we're doing district-wide for cost savings.
Thank you. Wayne?
So I know that it's really not part of this budget, but, it looks like we're gonna give them approximately $4.4 million next year. Approximately.
The transportation contractor? Sure.
I would really like to see them tighten their pencil when they're doing coach runs for us to field trips, because those estimates that they've given have doubled over the past 5 years. I know for a fact. And gas and diesel has been pretty fluid over the last few years. So I understand that there's an increase because of increased bus runs and things like that, but I really want to see when it comes to next year and the field trips that we do with Rolling V, that they really tighten up their pencil a little bit, because we're giving them a lot of money a year. And if we look at a couple of field trips, they've doubled the price in the last 4, 5, 6 years. And nothing else in the world has doubled in that time frame.
Sure, yeah, I don't know what their driver
give you
costs are,
specifics if you want me
but I can tell you that Rolling V does a great job donating buses that we don't see any of the expenses for. So I know that they take care of us on other things that we might not see. It might not be on a coach bus. That's a different business for them. I mean, I don't know what they pay their drivers or what the cost to insure a coach bus is as opposed to a school bus. I can certainly ask Mr. Vallone to see if he can help us once in a while.
I think what I'm asking is, like, with the 4th or 5th grades going to Carnegie Hall, they usually take a coach bus. And maybe 5 or 6 years ago, those buses for that field trip was $4,000 or $5,000. In 1 year, it went to $8,000, and then went to $10,000. So I just think that, those kind of increases really hurt the students. So I'd like us to look at those, that's all.
Yeah, I can certainly do an analysis from 1 year to the next. That kind of rings a bell. I don't know when I last did it, but I looked at something similar. I don't know if it was on coach buses, because someone did ask me what the increase was, and I'm pretty sure I looked at that, and I'll dig it up and then I'll update it, just so that will maybe help the board understand why the costs are the way they are.
Yeah.
Plus, I'll ask Mr. Vallone to give me, his narrative, his people version, rather than just giving you numbers.
Perfect, thanks.
Iris?
Yeah, Vince, I understand the concept of layover, and I see the cost of that. But under the aids column, like 39, to Sullivan, BOCES, White Sulphur Springs, the aids are, $56,600. So are these the bus aids?
That's correct.
So how many aids are on that bus?
I don't know on that bus, but if you look up above, looks like an aid is around $29,000. So if you look at line 28, right, the cost of the
Right,
aid is
so it'd be
28,342. So there might be, due to the layover, the cost of having that bus monitor there might go up an extra 50% or 35 or 40%, which is why it's not quite $56,000, it's around, looks like it's 342.
So I understand the layover is for the bus driver. The aid is for the bus aid.
Correct.
And this person, you know, we're being charged $28,000 for them to be on the bus to the facility and be on the bus home from the facility, and then to stay at the facility waiting for the bus to go home? I mean,
That's correct. Believe it or not, it's cheaper to leave the bus and all bus employees there when it's far enough away than to bring the bus back. You have to pay for fuel, then send the bus back an hour later, pay for fuel, and then
And the time.
and then come back again, and then there's the time. So when schools go out and issue an RFP for transportation, there's something called live time or live hours. So what you do is you bid out for 4 hours of live time. That's how much time the wheels on the bus are actually spinning from home to school, and right. So if you go out to Westchester County and it takes you 90 minutes there and 90 minutes back, you're now 3 hours into your 4 hours. And then you do it again at the end of the day, now you're at 6 of that 4. And plus there's the cost of the fuel. So it actually costs more to roll the bus out and back twice than it is to send the bus out, leave it there, and even pay the employee cost to keep those people there, and then bring them back at the end of the day.
so is there no expectation for useful work to be done during that time? In other words, we are paying people to sit and wait for the bus to come home.
That's correct. There's nothing that they can do while they're out there.
They're not aides in the school where they are.
No.
They're not.
They're not their employees.
Right. They are the bus company's employees. Now, if they want them to scrub down the bus, they can certainly keep them busy, but we can't send them into the school to do work. We can't expect them to do work for us. They're a contractor.
How long are they sitting waiting to come home? A school day, right? 5 hours, 6 hours?
It all
Julius?
depends on where they go.
Right.
When I was driving, there were times when we went to Poughkeepsie. And because of time schools are out and time school is on, it did not pay to come back home and go back.
I understand that
While you were
concept,
sitting
I
there-
just
while
wanted
you were
to,
sitting there waiting,
right.
you were sitting there doing just that, waiting.
And you're waiting fundamentally for the school day to go by. I mean, or are students going for 2 hours or 3 hours, or are they going for 6 hours?
That-
You know, how
Mostly,
does that work
I would
out?
say
They're
mostly
going for a
6
full
hours,
school day.
day.
Sure. They get there at 9 o'clock, the kids get out at 2:30, and then they're home by 4 o'clock, but the bus leaves here at 7:30.
And then there was those times like you go to Connecticut
Uh-huh.
to a school. It does not pay. By the time you get back home, you turn around going right back.
Right, I understand that,
All
but,
of those things are things that you run into along
Right.
the way.
right. I just wanted to clarify that in fact, people are sitting for 4, 5, 6 hours a day waiting for the bus to turn around to come
Yes,
home.
they
That's
are.
all. I just
We
wanted to
could-
grasp that
Yeah,
concept.
yeah.
And it is cheaper for us to pay them to do that.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
I'm not arguing that point. I just wanted to really get that they were just waiting for the bus to come home.
Jody?
So I think Iris has the question that I'm looking at, because it is a Sullivan bus run, going to Sullivan BOCES. There's 2 buses that actually are going there.
Can you help me with what line you're looking at?
Line 39. And I think what she's saying is the aids for next year is 56,000.
Right, so it's 2 aides on that bus.
Correct. But then there's also the one above it that's going for VOTEC. There's a layover.
Right, so that VOTEC bus might not have a monitor on it, so the bus is going to wait. So it's cheaper to keep the driver and the bus there than the driver, the monitor, maybe 2 monitors, and the bus.
What number were you on, Jody?
38 and 39.
So basically, Jody, what you're asking is why isn't there a layover number in that?
No,
other-
because obviously it's 2 separate places. One's for VOTEC and one is for
Right.
Sulphur.
Yeah, White Sulphur
Springs.
Springs is way out by Livingston, yeah, everyone knows
Right.
where White Sulphur is. It's
So they don't
it's a
have
different
that.
direction.
To
No, but they have
Bethel,
2
Then-
aids.
and the VOTEC and Sullivan is in Liberty and Ferndale.
Right,
Right.
White Sulphur Springs is between Liberty and Jeffersonville.
correct.
Yeah, but it's an all-day plant.
Yeah,
Go
it's like
in the
Bethel.
morning,
An hour drive.
You go
The
back in
Bethel
the
area.
afternoon.
Right, and I think the VOTEC is only a half a
VOTEC,
day,
You might
or
be here part of the
is
day
a
Oh,
and
no,
then go.
before.
two,
and come back
possibly
and
could
pick
be
them up.
double run too.
Yeah. So one more question, Vince. just
Sure.
to- So there are a number of aides in that column under special ed runs, but very few layovers. So in other words, the aides stay, but the drivers go somewhere else?
No.
Or do something
all come
else?
back.
Or-
No, so that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. So what can happen, but doesn't happen to us, is that a bus aide or a bus monitor might go out to, let's say, Orange Ulster BOCES, but not be needed for the second half of the day for whatever the reason. And then you might end up paying for that, because then they would put another monitor on another bus. Our transportation consultant, what he does is he looks at, okay, it's like a Jenga. How many different bus monitors do we have? Where are they going? And can we take bus monitor A, send them out to this school in the morning, but in the afternoon, they're not needed at this school, but they're needed at this school, but they weren't needed at this school in the morning. Use that same bus monitor on two different buses, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So we save money there as
So
well.
they come back?
They come back. Anywhere where you don't see a layover, like when we go down to Orange County, the bus goes down, bus comes back, and then the drivers go home. They do whatever they need to do in the middle of the day, and then they come back, they get on their bus, and they drive down to Orange County. They get the students, and they bring them home.
Makes your head spin.
Anybody else on transportation? Okay.
That concludes all the budgets for tonight. That's the overview. We will be meeting again soon. We'll make sure that the questions that were asked of me tonight, I will have answers for you. I'll put that in the, if how quickly I can get them, I might put them in my board report or include them in the next budget workshop.
So is there any board member that has anything that they'd like to see us take a look at for the budget?
I got the pre-K enrollment this year, increase in transportation, number of students on the buses and the seats for athletics. We want to know if we can, and we also want a list of unfunded mandates,
Anything else?
and
you'd
how
like-
many students we can keep back in the school district.
The board would like us to take a look at and maybe study? No? The next budget meeting will be, next budget workshop will be on March 3rd. Next regular school board meeting will be Tuesday, February 25th. Mark your calendars. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.
Is there still construction